Okay, thank you. So here we are, December Public Health and Safety, and we're going to go ahead and move through some updates that we have on the agenda, and then we'll get to some discussion, I think more when we talk about the fire inspection. So first of all, thanks to Barbara, we have minutes, right? So thank you.
For November.
Yeah, definitely thanks to Barbara for November. I do want to make sure credit is given where it's due.
Me too.
Thanks to Michelle Carroll
Okay.
for watching our June and July reporting and getting those minutes done.
Okay, so now we're up to date, would you say?
We will be, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So status of command report.
Did you want to ask for approval of the minutes?
Yeah, well, I assume are there any objections?
No.
Okay, I just,
Okay. Yeah, I assume you'll tell me.
just to be formal, that's all.
Okay. Go ahead, Chief.
Good evening, everybody. Again, thanks for having me as always. This is obviously meeting number 12, and this is a status of command report for that meeting. Nothing really too much in terms of changes overall. There are a couple of things I wanted to highlight real quick, as noted on the report. Personnel, right now, we are staffing authorized for 6 sworn full-time employees, 1 chief, 1 sergeant, 4 officers, no vacancies. There is a vacancy for parking controller currently. We'll continue to discuss that, myself and the mayor and Samantha, moving forward. There is, when we move down to fleet, there is 1 vehicle right now not currently in use. That's the parking controller vehicle. And the other vehicles are fine, they're all operational. Not too much this month. The one thing I wanted to let everybody know that's very important is that our municipal police officer education and training commission certifications are now complete. So we are able to enter all that information into the training and certification system, TAX, for the Pennsylvania State Police, and to make sure all the officers are updated with their certification and they'll get new MPO cards in 2022. The only thing that we have left, which is not MPO, actual MPO certification, is emergency vehicle operations for 1 officer, and then the training is going to be complete. As we move down into other training certifications and information section, we had a slight bump up of 3.5 hours in coverage from Lower Marine in November versus that of October. Not that much of an increase. We're expecting probably it to level off in December and then really see a significant drop come January, the first of the year. Not too much in terms of a change for the rest of it. You can go through completed training. The only thing that I would like to mention is that the Sergeant's Police Supervisory in-Service Training is now targeted for April 2022 with our new budget coming out for training effective January, which has already been discussed and approved. So we will have that allocated for the budget to cover Sergeant Fernaccio's in-service training, which is good experience for in-service training for first-line supervisors. We conducted a traffic initiative in October, which was very successful, and we provided the results of that at the last meeting. And in addition to that, we're planning to do another one this very month, probably within the course of the next 2 weeks. So they're usually about 2 days, and each day usually runs for about anywhere from 3 to 4 hours. So last month, we had quite a jump up in traffic enforcement in terms of the last monthly police report. So that's about it. Rob, nothing else really to report. Back to you.
Okay. Thank you, John. And we'll come back, I guess, later with the traffic concerns. Okay, so in the meeting packet, we have several memos from our manager. So these are accessible to the public regarding streetlights, EV chargers, the trash, and pest control. So, Vanessa, do you want to walk through briefly? Or?
Yeah, I'll just be very brief since, as you mentioned, Councilman McGrady, those memos are in the public packet. Just the highlights on the LED streetlights is we're almost there. Our manufacturer, actually, this may not be in the memo, the manufacturer for the remaining lights to be installed actually changed their part numbers So our consultant has been working with the manufacturer to ensure that we've ordered the correct lights that then need to be installed with the remaining 20 or so that do need to be installed. With the brightness, that was pretty much covered in my memo, and I do think that in the next couple of weeks here, we're going to start making some adjustments to lights based on the concerns we received to get that taken care of. And then with EV chargers for residential streets, unfortunately, we're still waiting on information from PECO to really do any further discussion on that item. Basically, we need to find out from PECO whether or not we can directly affix the charger to a utility pole or to a street light. Because if we could do that, that then saves a ton of money compared to then, digging underground and tearing up, the sidewalk and the road and all that to run the wiring for the chargers and all that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we're really hoping PECO will let us do that. Trash and pest control, I wanted to outline, per councilman reporter's request at our last meeting, a recap of what we've been trying to do so far with that. I'll also note we've seen an uptick in complaints about missed trash pickups over the last month or so. And basically, the procedure the borough is trying to follow, and I did want to kind of get this on the public record so the public knows and the council knows, is that if someone has a missed pickup or other trash concern, generally they should try to contact Republic first. I do know residents have had trouble getting in contact with Republic because sometimes their call center doesn't understand that someone's on a municipal contract versus an individual service. The borough office is absolutely here to help residents if they're unable to, get through to Republic's call center, or if after contacting Republic, their concern still isn't addressed. And then once the borough office receives the request, we're going to be getting much more strict with Republic. We did issue a fine to Republic 2 months ago for missed pickups, and I'm having a meeting with Republic, my 4th meeting this year with Republic on December 14th to basically make it clear to them if the borough office gets a complaint from a resident and Republic doesn't address that complaint per the trash contract, we are going to strictly enforce the provisions of the contract in regards to fines and that sort of thing. Because I just think the service level and what I'm hearing from residents is just kind of unsatisfactory at the moment. So I'll make those expectations clear to Republic on the 14th, and then we're going to, get much more strict about it.
So with getting more strict with Republic, should once, say it's been 6 days till they pick it up, should the resident contact the office again to let them know so they know it's been, how many days it was lapsed?
Absolutely, that would be helpful if a resident could share that, because the fine is per day.
Yeah.
And if I don't have some sort of knowledge or documentation exactly, then I don't know how much to fine them.
So maybe a follow-up email to the borough office saying it was picked up on Thursday, so you know how many days.
Exactly, and I think that'll be part of the response we get when residents contact us. We'll say, hey, we contact Republic. They'll say, this is when they're going to pick your trash up. If they haven't done it by this date, let us know and we'll issue them a fine.
Okay.
So is that something that we could include in the Friday newsletter, just the kind of basic process? First call this number for Republic. If you're not satisfied, email the borough office, whatever email you prefer.
That's a great idea.
Which email do you prefer for something like this?
For something like that, we do generally prefer the generic borough office email. Which I'm kind of embarrassed to say because I don't use it on a day-to-day basis. I don't know off the top of my head.
info@narberthcommunity.gov?
Yeah, okay. Okay, that's good, because we did receive at least one complaint just within this week.
Right, yeah.
And so we want to get the word out. This is the best way to handle it.
Right.
Yeah.
One thing that I'm wondering is, I too have had the struggle with Republic to get them to understand I'm talking about a municipal contract, not an individual one, but I've learned how to handle that so I can call them. And in a lot of cases, I call them and the trash gets picked up. And I don't think the office ever knows that they missed. So if we're able to do that and we're successful in that, should we still be sending something to the office to say, hey, they missed this. They came and got it when they said they would. But don't we want to know that to know where they're missing?
I guess from my perspective, I mean, things do happen with
Yeah.
the trash service, and I guess where I draw the line is if they are promptly responding to missed pickup reports from residents, that's gonna be, no, I just wanna be clear with people, like, that's always gonna be a fact of life. You know, things happen, mistakes are made, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that might be too strict of a line to draw for fines, given everything that goes into issuing a fine. So I do think though, if Republic doesn't follow up when this pickup is reported, then that's absolutely when we cross the line into fine territory.
I guess I wasn't thinking so much about fines, but just as this would be a way for us to have data to gauge how well they're doing. You know, if they're consistently missing sections of the borough and always having to come back on another day, I guess I don't know whether there's any, does that help us to know that or not, or maybe it doesn't? Because
Yeah, I mean, like, I will admit, like, anecdotally, like, we kind of, you know, remember after a while, like, hey, they've seemed to miss this one a lot. I guess I would just kind of wonder from an actual, like, I love the idea, I just wonder from an actual implementation standpoint,
I know, I don't.
how we would actually, like, keep track of that information.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to give some thought to that.
Yeah.
So I'll think on if there's a relatively simple, or not simple, but just not involved way to track that information. And I can get back to you on that.
Okay, and maybe it's not anything that we can do under this contract, but maybe it's something to keep in mind for down the road too, you know? Just I realize we're at the mercy of what their systems are, and, you know, and how they track things. And so, you know, do we want to have to engineer something for ourselves to track? Probably not some great big thing, but who knows? Maybe there's a way that in a future contract we could get a little help with getting statistics.
I would just echo Barbara's concerns as I live on a street that has been repeatedly missed. And it becomes a source of frustration when you have to repeatedly call them to get something that should be included in service. So maybe if residents could let the office know if there have been repeated misses.
That would be fun as well.
You know, something like that.
Yeah, I'll make a note of that for the blurb we'll put out.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, that's a good idea, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Senator, for working on the trash. It's very important. And also with the EV charging, I am seeing the stations well used in downtown. And so I know we're able to track the data on the usage, and as we've discussed, that could inform possible grant applications down the line, you know, for the residential area. So, yeah, so hopefully PICO will have a cost-effective solution.
That'd be great.
But I am hearing anecdotally from neighbors who are making the switch to EV, who don't have a way of charging at home, you know, and are using it.
It's not right.
So it is making that switch possible. So,
That's really good news.
yeah. Okay. So how about we move to the green building, or Bob, did you have anything you wanted to say on the trash front?
No, thank you. I'm good.
Okay. So we can move to the next set of things here, the Green Building Code, Soul Smart, and Stormwater. These are three areas that could be on the horizon for our committee, and we wanted to just maybe start thinking about some of these as they would relate to the Climate Action Plan. The first is this building code for construction, and it was a question of whether we could pursue a more kind of aggressive building code than is mandated by the state. Is that right?
Yeah, if I may, and then I'm happy to turn it back over. So yeah, so in the state of Pennsylvania, municipalities, there's state law about the building code that municipalities have to use and enforce. It's the Uniform Construction Code provided by the International Code Council, the UCC and the ICC, because everyone loves acronyms. And they also, in addition to their regular building code, for lack of a better phrase for it, there's also a green building code that goes a little bit above, and I guess what I'll call above and beyond, for building practices that are more environmentally friendly, less energy intensive, so on and so forth. So I did pose the question to the borough solicitor, whether the borough would be allowed to adopt such a code, or whether that would be in violation of the state, regulations with the code. He felt that the borough could proceed with trying to do such a code, and that we would not run afoul of the state regulations on that. So I guess the main thing I wanted to get from this group was, basically wanted to see what you all felt about it, and then see if the solicitor should move forward with preparing the ordinance and legislation that this committee and then borough council would need to consider.
I can't imagine why we wouldn't want to have better standards. It just seems like a good thing to be doing.
I guess I'll play devil's advocate for just a minute,
Go for it.
because I am absolutely just to be very clear, I'm very much, I don't have a vote here, policy's not my job, but I'm definitely in favor of it as well. The only downside I could see from it, just to be clear, is depending on the sort of project or the specifics of the green building code, it could result in more expensive projects for borough residents. However, I think with a lot of stuff we talk about, carbon shadow pricing and that sort of thing, it could be a situation where when you factor things like that in, the green option is, the less expensive option overall anyhow. So that's the only one little thing I would throw out there, but I do think this is something I would recommend in favor of us looking into it.
So you're saying maybe more upfront costs, but your long-term costs are lower.
Exactly.
And so they pay off. It's like the LED streetlights.
Exactly.
That's right. Yeah, and we can see the energy prices right now for gas and oil.
Can Manager Brian, could you send a link to that ordinance or to that code?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think it's important for us to actually read it and see what's in it a bit, because sometimes the simplest green solutions are not that high tech. And I'm assuming it's probably better, like Barbara did, but I would like to see it, because we don't necessarily need to build net zero homes in this region, if it's that kind of a requirement.
Okay, so maybe
zero. Yeah.
Yeah, we know what you mean, yeah.
Yeah, so how about we'll review it for our next meeting, and then in January we could decide as a committee if we are comfortable moving forward. Okay, I'll put that on the January list.
Actually, I think I am in favor of us building net zero homes. I just mean the kind of homes that are in the insulated air, completely airtight, is what I'm talking about. I don't the way they do in cold climates.
Right.
Yeah. So, okay, so next we have SoulSmart, which is something that Bob and I had started a few years ago, just looking into. And it's something that is recommended in the Climate Action Plan. And it would be a way of incentivizing solar for residents. So it's an application process, I think, to be certified as a SoulSmart. Is that right?
Honestly, Councilor McGrady, you probably know more about SoulSmart than I do. I've definitely heard of it and I've heard of other towns who've gotten that designation. And it's always been something that's intrigued me. I've just never had an opportunity in my prior employment or in my time here yet to thoroughly explore it. I will say that I, early on here read the climate action plan, and even prior to working here read the climate action plan.
Yes.
And on my to-do list, everything that I thought was an action item is on it, including the Soul Smart designation, but I just haven't had a chance to see what it entails yet, so I'm happy to get the info you have on it.
Okay, great. So maybe we can do a similar thing with that, so Bob and I, we could dig up our files and circulate with the committee. And my memory, Bob, is that it has a lot to do with the permitting process and kind of easing the way for residents to adopt solar. So,
I will
Sorry, Rob.
yeah, go ahead, Bob.
I have a hunch that if we were to just simply apply for designation now, we might be doing enough in the borough of Narberth to say like achieve a bronze recognition, and then we would be on the road towards improving that designation towards the silver or gold, which is a higher status. And so it's just a matter of doing the paperwork and joining the program. We may not actually have to do anything more than we're currently doing to get the basic entry-level status designation. But I think we should just go ahead and, if Manager Brian's okay with it, I think we should go ahead and just begin filling out the application and apply for the designation. And I'm willing to work on that with you, Rob.
Okay. All right, yeah, I think you're probably right, Bob, that we may already qualify. So it's just jumping through a few hoops. So
let's say the biggest thing that, the borough is working on at the December 15th Finance and Council meet, a draft fee schedule update was presented at the last Finance Administration meeting, and we finalized at the next one and then presented to Council on the 15th. And one of the provisions of that draft fee schedule is a waiver of building permit fees related to alternative energy, including solar panels.
yeah, and that's a key part of Soul Smart.
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, okay, great.
Yeah, so I mean, I would be, I really appreciate if you and Councilmember Weisberg are willing to work on that, and if it's something the borough can go ahead and get, I think that'd be great.
Okay, so yeah, I'll check with you, Bob, about that.
Yeah, I mean, to get bronze status, we might have to do something like put a box on the on the permitting application that says this is that designates it as a solar project. And then the zoning officer would give it some special attention because it was solar. Little things that we can probably achieve easily.
Okay, good. So the next item is the stormwater management, and I just wanted to be sure this was kind of on our radar because Manager Bryant had mentioned that I believe it's in the coming year that we'll need to update or at least review the ordinance. So that's kind of an opportunity for us to advance some of the CAP goals, and I'm also thinking of this ordinance in conjunction with the more intensive use of some of the open land, should it be developed. And so I would just like to start thinking about what a more stringent stormwater ordinance might look like, and so we would be prepared when it comes up.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And just to make sure I understand what you're saying, and so the public understands what you're saying, you're referring to the infill development that the chair of the Planning Commission presented to council.
Right. Yeah, I know that's not something we've voted on, and but
It's not been settled yet.
But in general, I think you're right. So DEP, the Department of Environmental Protection, has a requirement that municipalities adopt a new model stormwater ordinance by the end of 2022. And I forget all the details on it, but I do know it is more stringent than the current stormwater regulations. And anything in there from that applies to the cap that's not already encompassed in that model ordinance, this would be a great opportunity to work that in.
Okay, so that, and where would that kind of be in our
I think
governance process?
I think the conveyor belt of those related ordinances we have is the planning commission's working through the Saldo, finishing that up right now. Obviously the infill zoning is coming through. Probably a full zoning update would follow that, and then stormwater after that. So definitely by the end of 2022, but we're probably looking in like the second half of 2022.
Okay.
So I would say if the EAC or this committee has any specific recommendations for the stormwater ordinance, it would probably be best to get that done by, next spring, or by the end of next spring.
Okay.
So there's a new model ordinance, it's already out there,
Yeah,
so we could look at that
yeah, I could
At this
circulate
point,
that.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, that would be great.
and start thinking about what would we want to do with that? What we want to do in addition to what's in there.
Mhm. Okay. All right, so next we get to the inspection program. So would you like to just kind of sum up where we are? I know there's the
Yeah, it's a
memo.
very brief update on both of those. So, following our last meeting, I did ask our code company, Yerkes, and their representative, Kevin Walsh, to work on what the actual guidelines would be for a fire inspection and for rental inspection for us to look at. And I also asked the borough solicitor to prepare any relevant ordinances. For fire, the solicitor found that we don't need to do an ordinance, that the fire code that we've already adopted would allow for us to do those sort of inspections. So anyway, so Kevin is working on putting together a list for us to review of what the inspection would actually entail. And then Kevin and our solicitor are working together to prepare the ordinance and the inspection checklist for the rental one as well.
Okay, so that, is that an update, I'm sorry, to the memo then?
Yes.
Okay, so the commercial fire inspection, we no longer need an ordinance?
Correct.
Okay.
And what would precipitate an inspection? Like, would they be random or would they be?
No, so per the memo, commercial fire inspections would be done for I forget my exact language, but it's something like businesses, public businesses. So every business in the borough would have to have a fire inspection. Public businesses, so stores, restaurants, that sort of thing, would be more frequent. I think we said once every 2 years. And
I have it in front of me, if you'd like me to read it. The specific proposal would be to have the Borough Code Enforcement Officer inspect the common areas of apartment buildings and businesses open to the public every year, and for businesses not open to the public, like private offices, every other year.
Right.
So,
And then the rental inspection would be triggered at least once a year, or if there's a change in tenant. Now, we talked a little about that in infrastructure as well, and there was a certain sense that if someone has like every 3 or 4 months, if someone's turning over, that maybe they would get, exempted if they passed their last inspection. So that's kind of where our heads are at with it right now.
Yeah, I think we discussed 6 months,
Yeah.
In no case would you need to inspect
More than twice in a
more
year.
than twice a year, something like that.
At least once a year, no more than twice a year,
Gotcha.
if you pass.
Yeah, of course, that's a given.
yeah.
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 But all of that's going to be spelled out in an ordinance, right? Because
Yeah.
will the frequency of the fire inspection be spelled out somewhere, or since we don't have to have an
No,
ordinance?
it would have to be, it would be done via resolution.
Okay,
Oh, okay.
so we'll need a resolution for that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So is that something that we could ask the solicitor to prepare? Are we ready for that?
Oh, yeah, he's already been asked to work on that,
Okay, the resolution and the
and then the
and the
ordinance.
ordinance. Okay.
Resolution for fire, ordinance for, yeah.
Do we know when we might get those? Or just-
I'm hoping that for our January meeting.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, and then, ballpark, assuming the council were to, supports it, this could begin in the 2022 year.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, well, that would be great. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Samantha. Any other questions? Bob, do you have any questions on that before we move to the last item?
No, thank you.
Okay. So traffic, we have traffic concerns that have been, we're keeping a running list. So we can keep track of it all. And included in the memo is, in the packet is a memo about development traffic impacts. So this, I think, is partly in response to Dave Berto, who may be on the call. So when we get to public comment, Dave may want to comment on that. So I don't know, Samantha or Bob, if either of you wanted to speak to this briefly?
Councilmember Weisford, maybe you could start by talking about some of the research you did, and then maybe I can then follow up with the recommendations I put in my memo based upon the concern we received in reviewing that research. And
Yeah, sure.
All right, and I'll share my screen and put the and put that memo up on the for everyone here and on Zoom.
No, I just felt that the let's see, there it is. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In a meeting sometime in the past, a resident, Dave Berto, expressed his concerns about the traffic that will be created by new development, and I found it a very interesting question, and I began to think about how could we get the data to compare, say, the former uses that were on those sites with the projected new use of those developments. And so I just put together the tables there that you see based on the Institute of Traffic Engineers common trip generation rates, mostly for just the PM peak hours, which doesn't give you much of an estimate of what it is during the daytime, but particularly for residential areas, midday hours are usually less traffic than peak hours. So it's just basically comparing the four major development sites in the borough, the former gas station site, the Rickland's hardware store site, the office building site at Hafford and at Forest and Windsor, and the former Albrecht's Garden Center site. And just looking, and the conclusion that I came to simply by looking at the numbers is that we will have a net reduction in traffic generation during peak hours. And essentially because an office building generates many more trips than a residential building, and a hardware store or a garden center generates many more trips than a residential building. So I don't know, I can answer questions, but I don't think I think the data speaks for itself.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to put this together. My thoughts on, I took a look at the borough comprehensive plan, which was mentioned in, Council Vice President Weisbord's thoughts. And it does say to conduct a traffic circulation audit And I would certainly, be in favor of the borough doing that. It's in our comprehensive plan. It, speaks to concerns we received recently from residents. So I would certainly be in favor of maybe getting a quote from our traffic engineer to do that study. In addition, the comp plan talks about doing a complete streets policy, which that is definitely on my to-do list because it's not just part of the comp plan, but it ties into a lot of other initiatives the borough has been talking about. And then I did also, I've mentioned a few times, but just in this conversation, again, wanted to get it on the record, that as part of the subdivision and land development ordinance update we're working on, is there will be a requirement for new development to have to do a traffic study for council to consider as part of its decision-making process.
Okay, so thank you both. It's really helpful. Just, I mean, it's hard to even remember what was there, at 114 Forest, but it was an office building, and 45 trips in peak hour is a reasonable estimate. So, I don't know. Do we want to
I have a follow-up question for Brian, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is there a strange echo when I'm speaking? Is it okay?
No, it's fine.
What is the traffic circulation audit likely to, what is the scope of that type of project? Do you know?
I do not know offhand. That's something that I had to talk with Pannoni as part of getting a price from them. I think part of what they would need to share with us and maybe learn from us as well what the scope of the project would be.
Okay, because when I read, I thought that Mr. Berto's comment was really important, that the comprehensive plan suggests a traffic circulation audit. And in my mind, that was pointing to the issue of the network of one-way and two-way roads that we have in Narberth, and whether or not that's the ideal kind of layout for those one-way and two-way circulation. Does anybody else have an assumption that it's something else?
Well, that is kind of what the language that is in the memo, where it's quoting from the comprehensive plan. It says that the traffic circulation audit would be to evaluate vehicular circulation patterns throughout the borough, including traffic direction, turning movements, location of stop signs, and on-street parking. So I think that is what was envisioned when the comprehensive plan was put together. Not that I had anything to do with that, but that's what that sounds like to me.
And is that something that would happen in 2022 or 2023? What's the kind of what is that?
That will depend on two things. Number one is how expensive it is, and then number two, once we know the pricing, how quickly council would want to move forward with it. I'll say this, obviously this isn't true, but if money were no object, which it certainly is an object, logistically, we could start it as soon as, I could call Pannoni tomorrow and tell them we want to start working on it. But we just, I think we all agree probably the better way to do it would be get the price, and all that, and then if we have room in the budget to then, or if council wants to make a budget adjustment for it, to do so.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
So what I'd like to do is take public comment at 7:20, so that would give us about 5 minutes. I know that a couple of these traffic concerns relate to Dave Berto, and he may want to comment at that time. So Samantha, could I ask for just a brief update on the equipment I know you mentioned that in the memo, but.
Yeah, so the challenge of items 4.2, 4.3, and 4.4 is the speed and traffic count equipment. We got it installed over on Sabine, and then it, immediately pretty much died on us. So we actually had to send it back to the manufacturer for repair, and we had no timeline as to when we're gonna get it back. I think honestly, our best course of action might be, if the committee's willing to ask council to spend the money, is to activate the other unit. It would be $1,100 per year. And I was initially skeptical as to how much use we would get out of, how much we would need to use the units. But honestly, from what I've seen the last couple months, I think probably having the subscription on both units is probably going to be pretty valuable for the borough. So if this committee is willing to recommend that to council, I would certainly would be okay and in favor of that.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think, we saved a significant amount because we were able to use equipment that we already have, and just activate this new capability. So I would support that. I assume there's some sort of, guarantee or, when it breaks within a year. Yeah. Because, I guess the equipment is several years old, but the software was just recently installed. So I don't know which part broke, but yeah. I'd be definitely willing to spend the money, assuming that there's some guarantee.
That's true. Yes.
And then,
I support
You would support it, Bob?
Yeah, I support the manager's recommendation that we do that. Yeah.
And then for item 4.5, we discussed it previously. I'm just awaiting the traffic engineer to look at the site and get back to me on a recommendation for the committee to consider. And then the new one is 4.6, which since I'm already screen sharing, I'll leave my screen up here and we'll just go down to that one. All right, what's that? Still 4.5. All right, yes, it was from Mr. Bordeaux. So we've heard similar concerns from a couple other residents who intersect on different streets of Wynwood Road, about the parking and the sight lines and such are making that turn challenging as reported here in this work order. So per our procedure, if this committee wants, our next steps would be to either go ahead and take some action or to have the traffic engineer look at it or to take no action. I don't think this is one where the traffic counting equipment comes into play because it's not really a speeding or traffic volume issue. I think it's more one that again, where I think we probably would need the traffic engineer to give us some ideas for solutions. But as Councilor McGreevy mentioned, this might make sense given that next up we have public comment to also maybe give Mr. Bordeaux an opportunity to comment on this request as well.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So 4.6, it does make sense, right? That when it's sight lines, we don't need the equipment to measure things. And we did address the sightline concern earlier in South Norbert. I think it was South Norbert and Chestnut or Woodside. So, yeah. So this is it's definitely a concern. I know on the south side and probably maybe other places, cars parking too close to busy streets, and it's very hard to see when you're turning.
Yeah, actually, thanks for jogging my memory. Our solution to the other one, I give Chief Gallagher credit for researching the PennDOT parking sort of regulations. Him and a former borough public works employee found that you're not allowed, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, but you're not allowed to park per PennDOT within 20 feet of an intersection.
20 feet of an intersection that's controlled by a traffic device, 15 feet from the corner, if it's not controlled by a traffic device.
Okay, so this would be a 15 feet situation on East Wynwood.
Isn't there a stop sign?
Yeah, there's a stop.
Oh, does that count as a traffic device, or do you mean a signal?
No, it's any, it could be a stop sign as well. It's any
Oh,
type of,
okay.
it's any type of signage. I mean, I would have to confirm that, but I'm pretty sure that I'm right in the arena
Okay,
there on that one.
yeah, well, definitely. I'm guessing cars are parking within that 20 feet.
Just, if I may, Rob, I've been over there multiple times. I think the concern is that whether it's the south side or the north side of Chestnut Street, right there off of East Wynwood, as people take a left or right-hand turn, the cars are so jammed up together, if there's parking on both sides, that if you have a car coming down the opposing way towards Wynwood, from down Chestnut, and you have another car turning off Wynwood onto Chestnut, it gets tight, as many streets do, obviously in Narberth. I think that's some of the concern. Other than that, the other concern that I have coming off of East Wynwood is that people seem to really take that turn very hard as they make a left. That's one of the things that we've been out there enforcing. We've gone out there to East Wynwood and Chestnut. You have basically 4 streets on the south side. Three of them are all the way through. Chestnut, Marion, and Rockland. Elmwood does not run all the way through. But I can tell you, as they come down, the first street that they utilize with a lot of frequency is Chestnut.
Okay, thank you, John. So, okay, well, are there any other comments from the committee, or should we go to, go ahead.
Just real fast, I want to add one more area to look at for traffic concerns is the 100 block of North Narberth Avenue. I myself have seen a number of people going the wrong way up North Narberth Avenue. I've flagged down more people than I should be. So there's a ton of signs there. I don't know why people don't see them. But there's an inordinate amount of people I've caught going the wrong way up that one block by the post office.
Okay.
Well, I think to be fair and consistent with the process, I think what we want to do is once we have the traffic and counting equipment set up, is after we get through those other ones posted over there, check the volume of traffic that is going the wrong way, and then figure out the right solution.
Sure, I just want to raise it as an area to add to the list.
It's on the list.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So let's go to public comment, and we could start with Dave Berta.
Thank you. I guess my name was brought up a couple times on different subject matters. Is there a place you wanted me to start?
Well, yeah, you know, we first talked about the new development, so I don't know if you have any follow-up questions to that.
Yeah. So in regard to the new development, my question was, I guess all 3 members of council on the call, you're all members of the parking committee as well. We've heard some numbers or some ideas that there just aren't as many cars in the borough, but I think that we really need to take that kind of into context right now, why you feel the streets might be empty. Aside from COVID, you have the bridge that's been out, and I've noticed that there are less cars since the bridge did go out. And, I think that comes back in a couple of years. You have 3 major developments going on downtown, and you're going to have a 4th as well. So usually when you have major developments in a downtown area, that's also going to have cars that aren't going to probably be traveling in that area as well. So, it really kind of came when I saw this one report. It said that most municipalities require developers to submit traffic impact studies. And when I went back and I asked prior, I noticed that we don't really ask any of the developers to actually present any traffic impact studies. So that was one thing I think that kind of started this conversation. So the question that I had before was, with the new development, and based upon the state standard for a minimum roadway is to permit 2-way traffic and parking on both sides of the street is 32 feet. Many Narberth roadways don't meet the standard. So if we're increasing livable units by over 100 in the borough, what are we doing right now to start looking at that? Because I don't necessarily, this might just be a different way of looking at things. I don't necessarily think that individuals that rent apartments don't have cars. When I look at the statistics from the county, from the comprehensive plan, I'll look at the numbers here. It said here that, it looks like over 50%, that here 59.6% of our residents drive alone to work. 4.4% carpool. So that was one area. The other thing, I'm jumping around a little bit, is when I look at the statistics. So what I did is I actually called local, I called 2 local apartment developments. One has comparable rents to the one that we're seeing being built right now, and then another one which is located in Narberth. So one that's right around the corner from us, rents seem to be comparable to the one that's being built right now, has 250 apartments, 94% is occupied, 80% of the renters own 1 car, 20% of the renters own more than 1 car or do not own a car. The apartment building I rented out when I first moved to this borough about 21 years ago has 115 units, 60 parking spaces that they have that you can rent. All are taken right now with a waiting list. And they have no statistics on the number of renters who park on the street. So I know that it was brought up that I believe it was at one meeting, it was said that the Planning Commission did some sort of a study of our downtown area, that of the units downtown and how many of those units and the individuals that live there had cars. And it was like only 50% of them had cars. Based upon I'm not sure where that study is. I asked for it beforehand. But based upon that study, there seems to be maybe a disconnect. At least when I rented, when I first moved here, there were parking spaces available to rent. Because I remember they were giving discounts to people who wanted to use garage parking and not have to park out in the street. Now they're all being taken and they have a waiting list. So it still goes back.
Yeah, could you share, I would be interested to see any of the research that you've done. If you're willing to share it, email it to me, I could share it with the committee. And they're 2 interrelated issues, right? The parking and then the traffic. And so I'm thinking that our parking committee, Barbara is our chair, and we may be able to look at any of the research and see if it relates to our parking discussion.
Yeah, and the parking isn't necessarily, at least me personally, the parking isn't necessarily a hot spot for me, or a big thing. It's the traffic flow. Councilman Reevy, I sent you that email, I think, with a picture, right? And that was one street over, and you could see, and it was interesting. It was in the middle of the day. It wasn't around rush hour. I think it was 1 or 2 o'clock. I forgot when this was. It was on I believe it was a Friday, because I was taking the day off of work. And there were 3 cars deep on each side of the street trying to pass each other, right? And I had nowhere really to go, right? I think the other cars did, because based upon the look of the drivers when I saw them, they were pissed. they weren't happy. And we waited there for a while to navigate around the parked cars.
Okay, so Dave, I'm just looking at the clock, and we only have 1 minute. I don't know if you wanted to comment also about the East Wynwood situation.
Yeah, I just noticed when I come back, typically in the morning when I come back from the gym a few days a week, when I'm driving east and I'm making a left on the Chestnut, it's usually somewhere around 7:20 in the morning, give or take 5 minutes. Is oftentimes as I'm making that left-hand turn on the Chestnut, where I see where cars are coming down to exit onto Wynwood from Chestnut, and they're coming down the road or I'm coming up, and it can be a close call when you're making the left or when they're trying to come out, because as they're coming down the hill, it's a little bit of a slope, and I'm turning up into Chestnut Avenue with cars on both sides of the road. It can be challenging sometimes to navigate that at the same time.
Dave, I want to tell you, our police chief is nodding here. He's very much aware of that particular situation now that you brought it to us. And we're going to be looking into, how we can address that.
Okay.
So Dave, please follow up with me. I know we're out of time, but we will take this under advisement. I would welcome your email with any research.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Take care.
Okay. All right, so I think we're adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Barb.
Good to see you.
One down.
Yeah.
One down.
I'm stopped recording.